Shakespeare's use of history in the tragedy of Macbeth.
In the year 1603, one of Shakespeare's biggest fans, Queen Elizabeth of England, died at the ripe old age of 69.
Elizabeth's cousin, King James VI of Scotland, was next in line to the English throne, becoming King James I of England.
So when Shakespeare wrote the tragedy of Macbeth, sometime between 1603 and 1607, he had a very particular audience member in mind, his new king.
With a Scot on the throne, it was only natural that Shakespeare would turn to Scottish history as the subject of his next play.
He consulted a book by Raphael Holinshed called Chronicles of England, Ireland, and Scotland, published in 1577, where he found a story about a Scottish king named Duncan, who was killed by his own noblemen, Macbeth and Banquo.
Back in its earliest days, Scotland was a very violent place.
When rival clans weren't fighting each other, they were busy fending off Viking invasions.
So in those days, the most important responsibility of a king was to be a leader on the battlefield.
But the battlefield was a dangerous place, so kings often died when their sons were still too young to become the next king.
So the Scots adopted a system in which an experienced military commander was elected by the nobles to be next in line to the throne, should anything happen to the king.
At the time of the historical Macbeth, Scotland was starting to unify and settle down a bit. So a king by the name of Duncan persuaded the nobility to adopt a hereditary system in which the king is succeeded by his eldest son, no matter how old he is. And then Duncan proclaimed his own son, Malcolm, heir to the throne.
This change annoyed some of the noblemen, especially Macbeth, who was probably in line to be the next king under the old system.
To add to his frustration, Duncan was turning out to be a weak king. He wasn't very good in battle, and Macbeth was always having to sweep in and save the kingdom. Wasn't he more like a king than Duncan?
So, the historical Macbeth decides to take action. After secretly getting a pledge of support from one of the other military leaders, Banquo, Macbeth rebels against Duncan, defeats him in battle, and seizes the throne. Duncan's son, Malcolm, is forced into exile in England.
Macbeth reestablishes law and order in the realm and rules well for 10 years.
But then Macbeth gets paranoid. Having bumped off Duncan to become king, he worries that Banquo might do the same thing to him. So he has Banquo murdered.
This has an unsettling effect on the other powerful nobles, who wonder if they might be next. Meanwhile, Macbeth begins to act more and more like a dictator.
Down in England, Malcolm, who by this time has reached adulthood, seizes the opportunity. With the military support of some English lords,
the English were always willing to meddle in Scottish politics.
Malcolm defeats Macbeth, ascends to the throne, and reestablishes the rule of inherited kingship. His male descendants rule Scotland for the next 300 years.
Our listeners have probably noticed that some of the details from the history book are different from the details in the play itself.
That's right, Davina. Which brings up an interesting question. Is a history play supposed to be true to history?
For Shakespeare, getting history exactly right wasn't the most important thing.
That's right. He had other things he had to care about, like writing an entertaining play.
But he couldn't completely ignore the historical details either, so he had to find a balance.
In fact, comparing the historical version found in Holinshed's history book to what Shakespeare put in the play can teach us a lot about what other things Shakespeare cared about. What does he leave out of this version? What does he add?
There's a lot you could discover through that kind of comparison, but let's end with a short list of things important to Shakespeare's version of the story that you should keep an eye out for as you study the play.
King James is related to Banquo, so Banquo should be a good guy.
Kingship should be hereditary and not some other kind of system.
And killing your own king is a very bad thing to do.